Hi friends, my name is Nikki and I am the host of Source Clarity Podcast. Source Clarity is a way for us to align with the essence of who we really are. And when we align with the essence of who we really are, we align with the unconditional love that resides within us, and we begin to emanate a frequency and a vibration that is in alignment with this unconditional love. So the people and the experiences that we begin to attract in our life are now more in accordance with that unconditional love. When we realize that the core of who we are is love, life begins to change because we realize any thought or belief that we have been carrying or we focus on does not serve us in aligning with that love that we are at our core. We realize that those thoughts of resistance, doubt, fear, negativity, they're not in alignment with the truth or the source truth. So harnessing high levels of source clarity, to put it simply, is strengthening the relationship with who you really are to attract the things that your core self or your true nature desires to attract. And this is when the life experience becomes significantly more fulfilling. If you think about these words, source clarity, it is tapping in to that stream of joy, love, abundance that resides within you. It's tapping into the highest expression, or it's tapping into the all that is. Wherever you believe we come from, you can think of source as a filler word for wherever you believe we come from, that God energy, the source God, the all that is energy, the creator of the all that is, the mountains, the oceans, the stars, the galaxies, the creator of you. And if you come from this source energy, that must mean that you have some capacity that source energy does. We are made in the image of source. So to harness high levels of source clarity is to tap in to who you really are and to live a life that is guided by purpose, to live life guided by the greatest North Star that we have on this planet. And that is our intuitive intelligence. That is our heart's intelligence that is intertwined with the spirit self. And so today, we're going to focus in on ways to begin harnessing higher levels of source clarity so that we begin to attract the things that we want, right? To simply put it, like there are obstacles that we experience in life that kind of feel like unovercomable. It's like, why am I experiencing this obstacle that might feel unovercomable, right? And so source clarity is a way for us to identify why those obstacles are in our life, how they're associated with our purpose, and again, to attract the things that you would like to attract. To simply put it, you deserve to have the things that your core self desires to have in this lifetime. So today we're going to focus in on one of the ways to harness that source clarity to get the things you're asking for. One of the things, and this is it right here, one of the things that holds people back the most from getting the things that they're asking for or attracting a high level of success in their life is not realizing their inherent high level genius, not realizing their inherent high level brilliance. So to put it simply, one of the most incredible ways to harness high levels of source clarity to begin attracting more abundance in regards to your social life, financially, and career, to just elevate all aspects of your life, is to begin realizing your inherent high level brilliance and genius. There is this law of the universe that says we are all everything. And if we are all everything, yes, that means we have a certain level of ignorance that resides within us. I know I do for sure, right? The more that I learn in regards to the different laws of the universe and the mechanics of this universe, the more I realize the ignorance that I have. But if we have a high level of ignorance that resides within us, that must mean that we're all everything, right? So there's also an equal level of genius that resides within us. And many people are completely unaware of the brilliance and the genius of who they really are. The only difference between, let's say, an Albert Einstein or a Steve Jobs and someone that does not have that level of success on the outside is that those were, one of a different number of souls that realize the genius that resides within them, right? There may be someone that has a high level genius, but just doesn't tap into it, realize it, invest in it, believe in it to the point that they can experience obstacles over and over and over again. It's not going to stop them, right? The only difference between a high level, sort of someone that we would proclaim as genius and someone that we would say isn't, is, again, it is the realization of it. Because all of life, okay, and we talk about this frequently in Source Clarity Podcast, But all of life, it's a mirror of our energy. It's a mirror of what we could call a creator field. And if I have these feelings about the self, like I feel like I'm a stupid idiot, right? Like I did when I was a kid, for sure. And if I feel like I'm undeserving of love, the things I'm going to attract in my life are just going to mirror that back to me. And I do want to share the mirror analogy with you, although we've shared it a lot, but just for new listeners, okay? And we'll be quick with this because we have a lot of longtime listeners in here who have heard me share this frequently. But I really want you guys to understand this, which is if there's a full-length mirror in front of you, and this is going to help us with everything we're focusing in on today in realizing your inherent high-level brilliance. But if there's a full-length mirror in front of you, and if I were to ask you to have this full-length mirror, the reflection wave back at you, the question that I would present to you is, how would you get that reflection to wave back at you? You'd have to wave, right? If I asked you to have that reflection jump, what would you have to do? You would have to jump. If I now took the mirror away and I put a person in front of you, and I asked you to have that person put you first, or I should say, put you first, what would you have to do? Now, when I work with people, I get to work with the most incredible souls from all around the world, and I ask them this question. Sometimes they say, put them first. No, it's like the mirror. You'd have to put yourself first. If I asked you to have that person express love to you, what would you have to do? You'd have to express love to yourself. And this is how the universe operates. It's not necessarily blessing us, although technically all of life is a blessing. But from the perspective of attracting what you desire, it's not necessarily, the universe is not necessarily, let me say this again, okay? The universe is not necessarily blessing or cursing you. It is simply reflecting your energy. And we have these 8 different areas of our life. And the universe is simply reflecting our relationship with these different areas of our life. And so if you attract people in your life that are not seeing your genius, that are not seeing your brilliance, it's because there's an aspect of you that does not feel brilliant. And if we go back to this story that I've shared frequently when I was a child, where I was in school. And when I was in school, I was interacting with friends. I was doing anything but paying attention to the teacher. I remember in school writing songs. In school, I had an inherent high-level interest in regards to anything except for what the teacher was talking about. Now, on the outside, you might say, okay, this kid is stupid. This kid's an idiot. But technically, I wasn't paying attention. And when it had come time to take a test, I didn't know any of the information because I wasn't focused in on what the teacher had to offer and share. And my grades reflected this. But then I developed this limiting belief that Nikki is not smart. And so what kind of friends do you think I began to attract? I began to attract friends that expressed this to me. They thought it was playful. And maybe I thought it was playful at the time. But then all of a sudden I'm like, maybe I am an idiot. Maybe I am stupid. I began to attract the kind of friends where it was their humor to insult. And we all kind of did it. I'm not going to say that I wasn't a part of that in some capacity, right? But as I began to go through middle school and high school and things of that nature, that became a joke with a couple of my friends, like, okay, Nikki is an idiot or whatever it may be, because it was a reflection of how I felt about the self. It had nothing to do with my actual intellect, or it had nothing to do with my actual sort of level of brilliance or whatever it may be. It was simply just mirroring how I felt about myself. And this fundamental understanding is wildly beneficial to understand this fundamental perspective or law of the universe that life is reflecting our energy. It's really everything. Because to attract the life that you desire, it's going to require this high-level activation of you realizing your brilliance. Because if I am undermining my own brilliance, right? Or let's preface it this way, okay? We talk about harnessing high levels of source clarity to attract the things that we desire to attract into this world. And if source, the all that is, the creator of the all that is, right, created the all that is, created the mountains and the oceans and the stars and the brilliant, vibrant, bright you, we could say that if the all that is the all that is, okay, you guys are like, dude, what is this guy saying? Stick with me. We could say that source energy is truth energy. It is truth. So to see life through the lens of source is to see life through the lens of truth. And if you have these ideas about the self where you're not seeing yourself as brilliant, you're not seeing yourself as genius, you're not seeing yourself as the most remarkable, brilliant thing on this planet. You're not seeing yourself through the lens of truth. You're subscribing to a lie. And how is that any different than someone that subscribes to a high-level lie about maybe some news article out there in the world, and there's a group of people that subscribe to this lie, and a lot of people are judging them. They're like, why do you believe in this lie? And it causes division and it causes havoc. Well, this is simply reflecting the division that resides within us when we do not see ourselves for who we really are. And once again, there is no difference between someone that has high level of success like a Steve Jobs or an Albert Einstein or someone that we perceive as having high level of success. It is just that they realize their brilliance. Others begin to subscribe to it eventually, and then they begin to attract the ideas that were in accordance with their brilliance. One thing that I think people in the spiritual world understand, but also they don't understand is this. The one thing they understand is that you could say, we attract what it is we're a vibrational match for. And people are like, yes. But most people think of that in regards to things. It's like, okay, I attract what I'm a vibrational match for. If I feel joyful, I'm going to attract more joyful things. What a lot of people forget to realize is that if you begin to feel joyful, not only are the physical things that you begin to attract are going to be in alignment with joy, but the thoughts that you'll begin to attract, the ideas that you'll begin to attract are going to be higher frequency and a vibration, more in alignment with that joy, more closer to the intuitive self. They're going to be more intuitive ideas. So what happens is, if you aren't recognizing your genius, if you're not recognizing the brilliance that resides within you, the thought forms that you'll begin to attract are going to be more in alignment with that feeling of not feeling brilliant. They're going to be more, and now what happens is, a repetitive thought with an elevated emotion becomes a belief. So all of a sudden you have these thought forms that you're attracting because you're not realizing your brilliance. And they're going to cause you to attract more thoughts that are in alignment with that. And the decisions you make are going to be more influenced by those thought patterns in those thought forms. And I've had so many different experiences in my life now as an intuitive looking back and going, wow, I attracted this high-level obstacle simply because I made a decision out of feeling like I was an ignorant person or feeling like I was a stupid person, not recognizing my high-level brilliance. But here's something that I found actually pretty interesting, is that each of us have an inherent high-level curiosity. We have an inherent high-level interest. And when we're kids, we're pretty close to that. Like we haven't gone through any sort of traditional education program or whatever it may be. Well, maybe we're just starting. But it hasn't completely infiltrated our psyche at this point. And I remember when I was a child, and there was a season in my life where I was like super drawn to spiders for whatever reason. I was just drawn to spiders at this time. And me and my brother's friend, we would go spider hunting. We would go in these like giant bushes in our neighbor's yard and look for these huge spiders, catch them, and then we would feed them over a week's time and let them go. And it was this fun activity. We actually captured these magnificent spiders. Now on the outside, you might think that has nothing to do with my inherent high-level interest, but this is how to begin activating this process. The story is going to tie in with all of this. Now, at that time, you might think this has nothing to do with, Nikki's inherent high-level genius. Not saying Nikki's a genius because of his spider hunting, but follow me with this story here. So we like to find spiders, all of that. If there was someone at that time, okay, that took math and science, right? Those are two subjects that I failed. And they began to tie it in to spider hunting, or they began to showcase how math and science would bring about finding more spiders, or they began to just, again, tie in math and science to spiders at that time. The question I want to ask you is, do you think that would have gotten my attention? Or if someone would have taught me about math and science in regards to writing a song? It's really interesting. I'm a songwriter, for those that don't know. And like I said, when I was a kid and I was pretty distracted in school, one of the things I'd be engaging with as the teacher was talking was writing songs. When I write songs now, I actually look at it like a math equation, or I sort of look at it like building a puzzle. You're sort of pulling from the collective, these thoughts, these creative ideas, and you're putting it together like a puzzle. It really becomes like a math equation, like this melody with this lyric, with this sounding lyric. I really like the sound of certain lyrics. Like you'll hear me in a lot of songs say the word somewhere. Like I love the sound of that. It's a math equation for me. And if someone at that time would have utilized songwriting or catching spiders as a way for me to learn about math, my question is, do you think that my grades would have been as bad? And the answer is no. And I'm sharing this with you Because I think a lot of us, we have these inherent high-level interests when we were children, but a lot of that gets dismissed. A lot of that isn't realized that, oh, this is a part of this person's genius. And if I were to explore why I had an interest in regards to spider hunting and things of that nature, maybe I would have learned more about spiders, and it would have, manifested and expanded into something completely interesting, and I would have been able to tie it into my practices now. But the big block that people have is they don't see that their inherent high-level curiosities and interests is something that can begin to align them with absorbing more information that they think they're not interested in, like math, like English, like science, whatever it may be. When I begin to learn about the spiritual world and I begin to sort of deeply not just resonate with it, but understand it from a mental perspective, not heart perspective, but a mental one. I was like, this makes sense. You best believe all of a sudden my interest in science went to an all-time high. And so I'm sharing this with you guys because a lot of us have these beliefs and we have these thought forms that we're not smart, and then we have the quote-unquote evidence to prove why we're not smart. I get to work with the most incredible people from all around the world, and occasionally there's a little bit of pushback of like, Nikki, I think I kind of know my brilliance. And if you're watching this, maybe you have that thought as well. Maybe you're like, Nikki, I appreciate this episode, but I think I have a pretty good connection with my brilliance. Best case scenario that I've seen that people are connected with their brilliance and realizing is at about 28%. Okay, you have 28% realization of how brilliant you really are. Imagine what can begin to happen if you begin to see your brilliance at a 48%, a 68%, an 88%, a 98%, 100% of your brilliance. Think about the things that you'll begin to physically attract in your life, but not only that, the ideas. So I remember I moved out to Los Angeles when I was 20. Moved out to Los Angeles as a songwriter and things of that nature, and I became aware of what we call ingredients, or ways to begin attracting and building your dream life. I began to invest more in the science, and I began to learn more about affirmations. Right? Affirmations, they have a little bit of a bad reputation, and I understand that because if we're just saying an affirmation over and over and over again, the brain may not buy into it. The brain might not subscribe to it. It's kind of like saying, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy when you're not feeling happy, right? If you say, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, the brain's going to look around and go, I'm not rich, right? So I began to learn these techniques to get the brain on board. And my life really began to change at this point. I'm starting to understand how to utilize what we call ingredients, but what the world may call affirmations. And ingredients are many things. One of the things they are is, I guess, an affirmation. But again, we in this community, we kind of stay away from that word, but it's a familiar word. So I began to become aware that, okay, I'm writing a certain type of song. I was writing a certain type of song, but I still had these doubts. I still had this limiting belief that I'm not like a brilliant songwriter. But I began to realize, oh my gosh, the only reason why I feel like I'm not writing brilliant songs is because I don't feel like a brilliant songwriter. And I'm not kidding. I went so hard in reminding myself frequently about the brilliance of my creativity, the brilliance of my ideas, the genius of my songwriter. I literally began to feel it over and over and over again. And of course, I had those reflexive or combative thoughts going, dude, you're a good songwriter, you're not great. Or like, what? When I began this process, within about 2 weeks, I began to write some of my favorite songs that I'd ever written. Right? Beforehand, there's a thing out in LA where people want to show each other the songs they've written and the movies they've starred in or whatever it may be. And I remember in the beginning of that process, I would show people some of my songs. And like, yeah, these are good. All of a sudden, as I began to feel my brilliance as a songwriter, all of a sudden, people, not only did my songs, did I begin to love more. All of a sudden, these song ideas and my vocabulary began to expand, and the ideas and the excitement. But people begin to affirm back to me what I begin to feel within myself. And a lot of people, they think, to attract your dream life, let me just visualize and feel my dreams before they happen. And yes, that is wildly beneficial. We actually just did a whole webinar on this because yes, that is an essential ingredient or step, which is to feel in your dream life. But if there isn't a strong foundation of seeing you for the brilliance of who you really are, there's always going to be holes in what we call a creator field. So your creator field, it's responsible for influencing, shaping, dictating the matter that's around you. Your creator field is the thing that creates your reality, okay? It's a field of energy. And one aspect of the creator field is your electromagnetic field, right? We have what's known as a thought field, our emotion field, our soul field, our auric field, all of this, right? And if we don't have this strong foundation of I am brilliant at X, Y, and Z in regards to the thing that we're attempting to attract, it could be financial abundance. Maybe you're visualizing what it feels like to attract financial abundance, and that's great. Remember, this isn't a put it to the side thing. But if we aren't adding in the component of recognizing our genius in regards to creating financial abundance or the ideas that are going to allow us to create financial abundance, if we are skipping those steps, there are going to be holes. It's sort of like building a boat that there are holes on the side, and if water gets a little bit too high, the water will seep in and the thing will crash. And there's a lot of different people that will share stories with you and attracting a lot of things all at once, and all of a sudden it goes away. So really, this adventure in realizing your brilliance is realizing the essence of who you really are. And again, remember, when you realize the essence of who you really are, you begin to attract a life experience that reflects this energy back to you. I've had so many different experiences in my life where I can tie it back to simply me not recognizing, not feeling my brilliance. We think thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts throughout the day. How frequently, how often do you think you are intentionally utilizing what is known as the law of focus to focus in on your brilliance? I'm going to say, let's just sit for a second. How frequently do you think with those thousands of thoughts throughout the day that are contributing to the reality that you create, are you intentionally changing your thought patterns that cause you to feel not competent or whatever it may be? Now, the thing is, what begins to happen, like we talked about earlier in this, if I have this thought pattern, right? Let's look at this equation. Nikki didn't feel smart. Little Nicky was writing songs in school. He was interacting with other kids in school while the teacher was talking, so he wasn't paying attention, okay? By the time the test came around, he didn't know the answers because he wasn't paying attention. He got bad grades, and then all of a sudden he thought he was not smart. This created a belief. What began to happen is because I didn't feel smart, it began to affect my decision making, right? So it began to happen. I remember there's one incident, actually a pretty big incident in my life, and when I intuitively look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, this was reflecting. We go back to reflections. This was reflecting my lack of realizing my own brilliance. But when I was a kid, the neighborhood kids loved to ride bikes. It was like my brother, his friends, and a lot of the neighborhood kids loved to ride their bikes, build dirt jumps, go off the dirt jumps. It was like a thing. We used to ride our bikes downtown all the time. That was so fun, but especially ride our bikes off these big dirt jumps. Now, my brother was like the leader of the squad. He was like the dude that jumped over the creek, right? We had this neighborhood creek, and he was famous in our neighborhood for jumping the creek. It's like, oh my gosh, Jesse's jumping the creek. But that's besides the point. Well, I guess not really. But anyway, at this time in my life, I'm not feeling brilliant. I'm not feeling special. I'm not feeling seen I'm not feeling like people recognize that I'm special and brilliant and smart. So again, I'm feeling small. And most of the dirt jumps that they're building and I was building, I wasn't jumping. I was too fearful. I was too doubtful. I was like, oh my God, I'm not like my brother. He could jump off any of the jumps and I can't. One day, we were in this parking lot and I was with my brother and his friends. And it was a parking lot of actually eventually the high school that I went to is where this parking lot was. And there was this speed bump. Yeah. Oh yeah. There was a speed bump that they were getting. It had like a good kick to it. And they were getting like a lot of air off the speed bump. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I typically don't go off the dirt jumps. I was like, you know what? I can do this. And I had no belief in myself that I could actually do this. I was riddled with fear. I was riddled with doubt, but I was sort of sick of not feeling smart. And if we were to think of what it means to connect with your brilliance, it means that you have the capacity to absorb information to a high degree and integrate that information to a high degree. So I didn't feel I had the ability to absorb information to a high degree and integrate that information to a high degree. And because of that, it disconnected me from my intuitive guidance, and I felt I had to prove myself, even though my insides were telling me I can't do this. I'm telling myself I can do this, didn't feel like I could. So I literally, this is embarrassing. I go off a speed bump, go over my handlebars, speed bump. We're just taking a second to pause. If you're not watching and listening, we're just kind of soaking this in. Yeah. So I go off a speed bump to get some air. They're filming it. This is all on camera. I've actually never watched the video. I go over the handlebars. Boom. Face plant. Knock my tooth out. I'm like, I think I'm 11 or 12 at this time. And they send me to the ER. They actually saved my tooth. And there's a short window. I think it's 45 minutes. Could be wrong. Feel free to double check me on that. Where you can put the tooth back in. They put the tooth in. About 6 to 8 months go by. I don't know the exact time. I might have just made that number up. But eventually, we realized they put my tooth in backwards. Now, how do you think this made me feel? Stupid, right? Face planting, I felt stupid. From the ages of like 11, for whenever that happened, to like 22, I was having to deal with these teeth problems. But I want you guys to think about this reflection here. If all of life is reflecting our energy, okay? Obstacles amplify something that we feel about ourselves deep down. Now, I hesitate to even share that story because I don't want you listening or watching this to think, wait a minute, if I don't connect with my inherent high-level brilliance, does that mean I'm going to attract a giant obstacle where I knock my tooth out? Things take a while to compound to create a giant obstacle like that, okay? An emotional imbalance that is left unattended to for a long period of time will eventually create a big obstacle. But like, life isn't punishing us, okay? So I want you guys to let go of that right now. I almost hesitated to share this story. It's like, wait a minute. Is this dude saying he didn't feel brilliant, he didn't feel smart, so he attracted a scenario where he's around his brother and his friends and he knocks his tooth out? No. I'm saying eventually that compounded resistance creates a big obstacle. So the question is, if all of life is mirroring our energy, like we talked about in the beginning of this, how do you think I felt? Well, all aspects of our life have an energetic meaning our physical body, it's symbolic of things. And the teeth represent breaking down ideas. Our face has to do with how we're perceived. So intuitively looking back, and I know exactly what it was, but I didn't feel smart. I felt stupid when people would look at me. Like, that was the feeling. And breaking down ideas and really what it was in regards to socially in my life, and that had gotten so bad that it attracted how I was perceived. Anyways, what began to happen is like, especially in middle school, people were making fun of me, and then I always felt kind of stupid with this tooth. Again, keyword, I felt stupid. Anyway, I'm sharing this with you. And then again, the tooth is put in backwards, right? So I attracted a scenario where this person that put my tooth back in, I think it was like a nurse that it was her first time doing it. And she did it because there's a short window to do it and there was no one else around at that time. So she puts it in backwards. But again, I attracted a scenario that amplified my feeling, again, of not feeling brilliant in my life. I'm sharing this with you guys because this is what began to happen as I began to constantly harp on myself for not feeling smart. But then there were different times in my life where this had begun to change. I've sort of had enough of this, and this began to change. And I want you to think about your own life. The circumstances where maybe not an obstacle to that degree, but the circumstances where you're around certain people and you feel like they're just not seeing your brilliance, right? They're not putting you first. They're choosing someone else over you. And the frustration that can begin to compound, or the times in your life where you feel like it's just difficult to attract money, right? Some signs of feeling like you are not connected with your inherent high-level brilliance is that there is that financial struggle, and you feel like, and specifically the thought that you'll attract, because I've had this, which is, I feel like I just can't figure out how to attract the financial abundance. I feel like deep down I have the capacity, but I can't just figure out how to attract financial abundance. I can't figure out how to overcome this obstacle. I can't figure out how to attract social abundance, or for people to respect me, or for people to get me. And these are the thought patterns that will begin to form. I can't figure it out, and the resistance can begin to grow. The resistance can begin to compound, and the things that will begin to attract are more in alignment with that, and ultimately teaching us the lesson to see ourselves for who we really are. From the perspective of Source energy, Source sees you as brilliant. And to see you for who you really are, to harness high levels of Source clarity, is to realize that high level brilliance. The only difference between you and someone that is has high level of success or is seen in the world as brilliant is that they believe more in their brilliance than they do the doubt and the fear that arises within the mind. And most highly successful people that the world has now seen as brilliant, They have stories where they felt really stupid when they were kids, right? And ultimately it was a catalyst for them to realize who they really are. But I just want you to think about your life and all the times that you have not intentionally begin to feel your brilliance. Because remember, a belief is nothing more than a repetitive thought with an elevated emotion. It's like if I told a child that the sky was falling once, that would only just be a thought in the child's mind, right? But if I told a child, right, imagine I'm driving a child to school every day, and I'm just driving and I'm like, hey, the sky's falling. They'd be like, okay, whatever, okay? Told them once, just a passing thought. But imagine I'm driving them to school every day on the way to school with an elevated emotion of fear. I was like, oh my God, the sky is falling, I swear. What do you think would happen to their brain after 2 weeks, after a month, after 2 months, after a year? Every single day, this fear. Trust me, you got to believe me. Literally, probably on day one. But this would become a belief in the child's mind, even though the sky's not falling. And here's the hard truth. You have thoughts and beliefs about yourself that are just as ridiculous as the sky is falling, but you've been thinking them for so long, and because you're so powerful, you have created circumstances, you've created evidence to showcase your brilliance. But like the story I shared when I first began to realize, wait, I can be a brilliant songwriter. The ideas, this is what I want you guys to get. It's not just the physical things. The ideas I begin to attract were more in alignment with brilliance, more in alignment with like enjoying the songs, more higher level creative songs. And then I begin to attract people sharing that with me or expressing how they felt about my songwriting. And then that became my evidence, and that began to grow and expand. Now, here is something that's also interesting to understand. If all of life is reflecting our energy, right, and we attract what we're a vibrational match for, the things that we experience outside of us are also reflecting our energy. And I have a similar story of something that my friend experienced that I was there for. But when I looked in intuitively, it had everything to do with me not recognizing my brilliance and my genius. We were on a snowboarding trip with me and a couple of friends, me and two friends. And me and my other friend it was me and two other friends. Let's call one friend who this story is about Billy Bob, and we'll call my other friend, what's a good name? Steve, okay? So me and Steve are telling Billy Bob, we're like, listen, Billy Bob, wear a helmet, because Billy Bob was adamant that they were not going to wear a helmet while we were going snowboarding. And basically the whole car ride trip there, we're attempting to convince them to wear a snowboard helmet. They were like, no. On the first hill we went down that day, the first slope, it was a jump. He goes off the jump first. We see him go up in the air without his helmet. And then we see him, then he lands, but we don't see him come out on the other side. And we're like, awesome. Okay. So we snowboard down to where he is, and we see him sitting there, and he's like, oh, dude, I just hurt myself. And we're biting our tongue to be like, man, we sure told you to wear a helmet, but we didn't say anything. We go back to the lodge. This is the first run of the day. Okay. Go back to the lodge, and we get some drinks and whatever it may be. And I remember he was sitting there, and he goes, hey, where did my keys go? My wallet. And he kind of searches on his body for it, and then all of a sudden he finds it, and he's like, I found it. About 2 minutes go by, the same expression. Where's my keys? Where's my wallet? Right? Starts searching his body for it. We're like, uh-oh. Does it like 2 more times. We end up taking him to the ER, right? He ends up having a concussion. There's a lot of funny things that have happened in this story. Like, we end up going to lunch because the doctor said we could, and we wrote him a list because he started asking the same, 8 to 15 questions over and over and over and over, asking if he had a girlfriend, asking if all these other things. We wrote him a list of all these things, and the good news is, so he had a concussion, but the good news is he was fine. The doctor said this was a short-term concussion. He's going to recover by today. And then eventually on the car ride home, his memory came back. But the doctor was like, yes, because it actually became comical. The doctor's like, yes, you can laugh at this because it was becoming comical. The things that he was asking, like he peed in a pee cup behind him, and he would look back every 2 minutes and be like, did I pee in there? Wait a minute, I pee like a racehorse. He would get calm. Did I pee in there? I pee like a racehorse. And then he would look at the clock. It's only 12 o'clock. Let's get back out to the slopes. He'd get calm. It's okay. It became funny when we knew he was okay, because this went on over and over and over again. When I began to look back at that scenario in my life, I began to look at the fact that it was also reflecting something within me. Yes, he had his own reflections. We won't talk about those. We'll talk about my reflections, because I want you guys to understand this, is that you'll also attract things outside of you, begin to observe. And this is something known as the law of previews, when you begin to see things outside of you. But he hit his head. He didn't feel he had the capacity to go off this jump. He didn't feel like he had the capacity to land it properly. He hit his head, and it literally manifested in a physical injury in the mind, right? The brain not knowing, whatever it may be. This was reflecting within myself, okay? Because I'm going back to me here as well. He had his own reflections. My other friend had his own reflections, Steve. Billy Bob obviously had his reflections, but I remember looking back intuitively at that time and going, wow, that was also reflecting me not seeing my brilliance, me not seeing my genius, me not frequently feeling it as often as possible. And when you don't frequently see your genius, there is going to be this underlying feeling like something is off. And many of you might be able to relate to this. Maybe in regards to your work scenarios, you feel like, man, my coworkers are just not seeing me for who I really am. Or again, we talked about money or friends or your family or whatever it may be. You're going to feel like, man, they're just not seeing my genius. You might have the most incredible ideas in the world, but the world cannot see them if you cannot see what makes your ideas, who you are, where they come from, genius. And this has everything to do with harnessing source clarity, because source clarity is aligning with the essence of who you really are. It's aligning with the totality of self. And if you are not seeing your brilliance, you are not seeing you, and you are attracting the thoughts of doubt, fear, negativity, worry, whatever it may be. You are put on this planet with a divine purpose. The highest expression of wherever you feel we come from, source energy, the all that is energy, placed you on this earth with a divine purpose. And what if your purpose, what if your mission had something to do with allowing others to see themselves for who they really are, to some capacity, in some way? If you think of any great mind that has changed the world for the better, whether it's Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, one of my favorite athletes, Stephen Curry, there's something about observing Stephen Curry, if you are a fan of his, that there's something within the self that goes, wait a minute, if he can do that, I can accomplish my dreams and goals. So if part of your purpose is to help others realize their brilliance, the question is, how do we go about this process? We go about this process by realizing our brilliance, by realizing our genius. And now you begin to attract the ideas that are going to allow you to overcome that adversity, overcome that obstacle, that are going to allow you to attract the abundance that you so desire to attract, that are going to allow you to have high levels of physical health. Because as you heard in some of these stories here, there was physical injury in regards to us not recognizing our brilliance, or me not realizing my brilliance. But things can begin to change. So what I want you to take from this, I want you to think about your own life, and I want you to think about how frequently you have held yourself back from realizing your brilliance, and the actions that it's held you back from taking in your life, whether it's asking that cute girl out on a date, right? Imagine going on a date. You're not seeing how genius you are. You're not seeing how brilliant you are. Do you think that the people in your life that you're going to attract are going to see you for who you really are? And you might not even realize this. Once again, I find it pretty interesting, when you have intuition, you can kind of spot lies, and a lot of people think they realize how smart they are, how genius they are, but really, it doesn't go a very high percentage to the capacity that you can. But if you can see you, you'll be attract people that celebrate you in regards to the dating world, your romantic partnership that you're already in regards to your social life, your family, whatever it may be. I was working with a one-on-one client, going over this technique and this protocol, because we have a myriad of different ways to go about this process. We'll get into that later, but what I was sharing with her was this perspective and the techniques that followed. And she went, well, what if, I subscribe to this idea that I'm the best of the best and I'm a genius and all these other things? Could that come off a little egotistical? The ego is holding a place for when we don't authentically feel connected to something. Now, the ego is not negative or positive, but we have to begin to understand, if you can authentically connect to your genius, your brilliance, and things of that nature, we have mirror neurons. People are going to pick up on that. People don't do what you say. They do what you do. They reflect back to you the behaviors that you engage with. And when they see your life is changed by realizing your brilliance and your genius, you're going to inspire them to connect with their genius the same way. When I watch Stephen Curry play basketball, there's something in me that goes, wait a minute, if he can overcome his adversity, because he was always overseen in his career growing up, if he can overcome his adversity and he can do these special and unique things, there must be something within me that can also activate that within the self. All the obstacles and the adversity that you have experienced in your life, they are a gift. And I know that might be difficult to hear right now, but they're all bringing you back to realizing how genius, how special, how brilliant, how bright you truly are. And you might know this on one day, and then the next day you wake up and it feels difficult to connect with this perspective and this mindset. So the challenge is, how can I begin to feel this frequently? How can I begin in the nuance that life has to offer, integrate this perspective, integrate this technique to begin feeling our genius? And again, now what do we give ourselves an opportunity to do? To attract those high frequency thoughts and ideas that could change the world for the better, right? We attract more of a life experience that feels joyful, more of a life experience that feels fulfilling, more of a life experience that feels meaningful. Because again, if you're not seeing you for the genius that you are, you're not seeing yourself through the lens of truth, and you're no different than that person that you judge for subscribing to the lie that they subscribe to. How is it any different? If a child thinks the sky is falling and it's not, how is that any more ridiculous than you don't see yourself as genius when you're not? And if it's not the truth. So this isn't about like fluffing up or whatever it may be. It's about this universal law that we all have an ignorance that resides within us, yes. But if we have an ignorance that resides within us, that means we also have a genius. That means we also have a brilliance that resides within you. And if you can begin this process of engaging with this genius, feeling it frequently, I want you guys to play with it. I always say, don't take my word for it. Go out into the world and explore what it means to feel like you're a genius. Go out in the world and explore what it means to feel like you have an Albert Einstein and beyond level genius. Okay? And then through this process, maybe you strengthen the relationship with your intuitive self. I've had many instances in my life where I felt like in the beginning of my intuitive journey, felt like I was having a hard time pulling intuitive information. It went back to me not feeling like a genius. It went back to me not feeling like I was brilliant, so on and so forth. It came back to that specific ingredient because the life experience, the one that I was attracting, was mirroring that. I was sharing this with our teachers in teacher activation today, with their intuitives and their training as teachers right now. And I was sharing this with them, and when I was 16, I felt like I had what felt like this awakening in my life. And the specific thought that I began to connect with was, life is a video game. And I remember when I was 16, I was like, this makes so much sense. I thought about it. I was like, if there's a video game called life and you get to design the character and you get to design the experiences that this character has, I imagine like in the beginning of the game and you have the controllers and you're picking the hair color, you're picking the personality, whatever it may be. Well, let's just say your higher self is playing this video game that is life, and your physical form is your avatar. And I remember before I was 16, not feeling like I had an abundant social life. And as I sort of connected with this mindset and this perspective, I really got excited because I was like, wait a minute. Because what would happen is I would have these doubtful thoughts that people liked me and wanted to hang out with me. But what I began to realize, I was like, wait a minute, if I choose that I'm the character that has social abundance, those thoughts aren't going to matter, because someone that has social abundance can have those thoughts and still have social abundance because they're a person with social abundance, right? And so I began to really do this with all areas of my life. I was like, wait a minute, I don't feel smart, but my higher self is playing this life video game and my physical body is the avatar. I'm going to choose to be someone brilliant. And if I choose to be someone brilliant, any thought that comes up is a thought pattern of someone that is brilliant. And if you think about it, some of the greatest geniuses of our lifetime have also felt like they were idiots at one point. So I began to go, wait a minute. Some of the greatest geniuses ever have had these thoughts of not feeling smart. So when you identify with a high self-image, when you identify as brilliant, things will begin to change. And this changed everything for me at 16. People began to treat me differently. I attracted social abundance. My life changed overnight. I was sharing this recently with our Saturday service group. And for those that don't know, our Saturday service is our in-person church-like community gathering experience out in Austin, Texas, where we talk about all ways to harness source clarity, like the podcast, like our webinars. And anyone can join. And so if you're in Austin, Texas, we want to see you. Or if you're near Austin, Texas, you can join. But I remember I was sharing this perspective with them. I was going, we were talking, I think, we're talking about harnessing soul joy, and then we started talking about money. And I went, this might sound ridiculous to you at first, and if it does, that's fine. But the truth is, from the perspective of source energy, the all that is, attracting $1 trillion is a math equation. And each of you have the capacity to do it. And the people that have been in a position of power for thousands of years, they intentionally created this narrative that creating trillions of dollars is difficult. Especially, they aimed that programming at spiritual, sensitive, high-loving, high-frequency people so that they would never be ambitious to go after their dreams and goals and to attract financial abundance. Because some of you may be listening to this, well, what's the point of attracting $1 trillion? Not that you have to. I just want you guys to understand what it means to realize your brilliance. It's knowing you have the capacity to create it. And imagine if the sensitive, like-minded, spiritual, loving-hearted people, they began to go after their dreams and goals to that degree, knowing they can create trillion or billion-dollar empires. Well, do you think that the companies that they create, they're going to be ones that change the world for the better? Do you think other people are going to learn how to get out of financial poverty if they learned how to do it themselves? Yes, absolutely. I'm sharing this with you because even not seeing you as having the capacity to create billions or trillions of dollars is playing small and not seeing you for who you really are. Doesn't mean you have to go do that. I'm not saying that, but this is a programming that has been inserted inserted into our brains and our minds, right? So the truth is you do have the capacity. And if you're a listener of Source Clarity Podcast, you have, I'm assuming you are somebody that has the capacity to create something incredible in this world. I'm assuming you're someone that there were so many different seasons in your life where you felt something was off. Deep down, you felt like you had something special within you. You didn't feel like there was a lot of direction in allowing you to activate that aspect of who you really are. Well, this is your opportunity. This is your way to begin creating and generating your inner brilliance and genius. You are the creator of your reality. Life, it's like no different than a dream. I was sharing this today. Yeah, it's like no different than a dream, which is like, I was sharing it today with our teachers, which is if you're in a dream, okay, and I remember like one time I was dreaming, and I was flying, and as I was flying, I knew I was dreaming, and all of a sudden I hit the pavement in my dream, and I had a hard time getting back up and flying. Life is it's a little bit more slowed down, but it's no different than a dream. Before I knew I was dreaming, I believed I could fly. The minute in the dream I believed I couldn't fly, that became my dream. Someone that couldn't believe they could fly. It's like a video game. It's like a dream. If you decide to see yourself as brilliant, things will begin to change. It doesn't mean the obstacles go away. It doesn't mean you've overnight created new neural pathways or new neural networks, okay? It requires a high level of focus, but to attract that financial abundance that you desire to attract, to align with your purpose, to align with high levels of source clarity, to attract social abundance, like-minded people, and things of that nature. One of the most beneficial ways to begin this process is, yes, to recognize the genius that resides within you. And the beautiful aspect of all of this, and where we can summarize all of this, is that it aligns you with your purpose and your mission, because you have what's known as inherent high-level skill sets that are unique to you based on your story, based on the experiences that you've had in your life, based on the way that you were built. Source built you for a unique mission and a purpose, okay? If you think about a chair was built with 4 legs and a seat and a backrest with a purpose. If you think about any animal in the animal kingdom, it actually they all have a purpose. You can look up the purpose of even something like a fly. Okay, look up the purpose of any sort of animal in the animal kingdom, of a bee, and how wildly incredible they contribute to our society and our ecosystems and things of that nature. You were built with a purpose. Realizing your brilliance will align you with your inherent high-level skill sets that are unique to you, right? Because you might be attempting to go after something that you think you want, and maybe your genius doesn't necessarily reside in, dancing, but it resides in communication, and you're trying to dance, okay? And I've shared this before on the podcast. If you were to judge, if there were an alien that were on Earth, and that aliens saw a 9-month-old baby, human baby, and a 9-month-old puppy, and they knew nothing about this planet, they might think that that puppy is more smart than the human baby. But that human baby, right, has a longer developmental process, okay? The puppy might be able to play fetch, jump, sit, might be more developed at 9 months. It doesn't mean that the human baby is not brilliant and genius. There's a longer developmental process. You are no different. Life is the same way. Your aligning with your mission and purpose might have a longer developmental process, but you were put on this planet with a unique mission and purpose to realize the brilliance that resides within you is the first step to attracting a life that you desire, and you can do this. Now, here's what's great. We have a webinar that anyone can join, okay, complimentary webinar that we're hosting every Wednesday. So you can get that information in the show notes. So if you have questions about this podcast or the information in the webinar, you get to ask me live, okay? We also have Saturday service if you're in Austin, Texas. All that information is going to be in the show notes. So if you have this poll to learn, to expand a little bit more, where we go into even more detail, more depth, more advanced information. We also give intuitive guidance in the webinars. You can join in the show notes. I can't wait to see all of you there, and thank you for being a part of the Source Clarity community. Thank you for listening to this episode of Source Clarity Podcast. Stay awesome and authentic, friends. Alrighty, peace.